Last month, Rode released a firmware update for their Wireless Go 2 line of microphones. The firmware update was designed to get the most out of the Wireless Go 2 mics and the camera of your choice, which for me is the Lumix GH6 from Panasonic. So in this video, we're going to be taking a look at my audio settings in camera and comparing them to the GH6 preset from Rode. This is going to be an interesting challenge for me because before I got into video, I was really into audio. I did a lot of sound work for local bands and even musical theater productions. When I started working in video, it just became sort of oh, it sounds good enough, and that's okay. But we're looking to change that today. So to get started, you're going to need the latest version of the Rode Central app, which is their desktop app for managing all of their wireless microphones. For me, I had to download to version 2.0.3, but for you, it might be something more current, depending on when you're watching this video. So go ahead and download that right from Rode's website. You're also going to want to make sure that for your Wireless Go receiver and your transmitters, that you're on at least firmware version 2.4.1. I think that's when they released it. Now they're up to 2.4.6, as you can kind of see right here. But again, depending on when you're watching this, it might be a later version of the firmware. So with your receiver plugged in, you're going to go ahead and go into Rode Central app. You're going to click on the receiver just so you can access all the different settings. And right in this gain mode, I typically have it on this fine gain mode, and I have it set to around negative 15 dB. That's just how I wound up doing it, and I got decent sound out of it. It might have been a little bit hot sometimes for some client interviews, but it typically tended to work out fine for me. Now, if you click around this, you'll have the camera gain mode there. You also have a coarse gain mode, which I never sort of use because it's very, you get like low, mid, and high are basically your settings for gain there. So I'm typically on the fine gain mode. What you want to do now is come into the gain mode for the camera. Now this is where you can access presets, which they apparently used to have before, but this firmware update just brings more camera models into it. I already have one set up for the Panasonic GH6, but as you can see, you can go through a list of manufacturers: Panasonic, Sony, Canon, Nikon, Fujifilm, Blackmagic, Olympus, GoPro, Leica, and you can even set a custom camera preset in here. So they really have a ton of different options for you depending on your brand, but I just went right into the Panasonic list. You can scroll on through, and right there, the GH6, that's my camera. If you're watching this, that's probably your camera as well. So go ahead and click that, and then you follow the settings, and they're gonna prompt you to download an instruction manual, but don't worry, I have all the info that you're gonna need from that instruction manual. So if you don't feel like reading it, you can just watch this video, follow along. After that, you wanna select the GH6 as your camera preset. You'll be able to tell because it'll have this dark gray block around it. So you'll see GH6 is selected up there. I don't think there's a way to make the GH6 the default preset, so you're just gonna wanna pay attention every time you turn the mic on that it's set to the right preset. But that's basically it. You wanna make sure your receiver and your two transmitters are on the latest and same firmware version, and then just go into the receiver with it plugged into Rode Central and follow the steps to create and save the GH6 preset to the receiver. As I said before, Rode prompts you to download a PDF that walks you through the ideal camera settings for your audio before switching over to this GH6 preset. So the four main things that we're going to be focusing on are the record gain level, the record level limiter, the record level adjustment, and the wind noise reduction. I'm gonna start with wind noise reduction just because it's the simplest thing. You're gonna wanna turn that off. If you've ever been in a really windy place and you hear wind pass over a microphone, it doesn't sound too good. Is kind of what it sounds like. By turning this off, yes, you are going to be introducing the possibility of getting a lot of interference from wind if you're on location on a shoot. However, you're going to be adjusting other parameters that are going to help reduce the risk of something happening and something clipping and just destroying your audio. Next is the record gain level. Gain is a term that some people don't understand, especially if they're new to audio or video, but it's essentially your microphone's sensitivity to sound. Most devices will have a number scale when it comes to gain, and the higher that number is, the more sensitive your mic is going to be. The GH6 doesn't have a numerical meter for gain, it just has standard and low. Set it to low. Next is the record level limiter. It's a form of compression, which is a whole other topic for another video. But basically what a limiter is going to do is it sets a top limit for the audio that you can take in, and anything that's above that, it's going to compress that so that it's a much more usable and user-friendly volume level that you can work with. And compressors also help to take low volume input and bring them up so that everything's much more squished together like a sandwich, much more easier to digest. Last but not least, we have the record level adjust setting. And this is where you can really dial in your audio sensitivity and your levels for your camera. Any audio video you watch for a tutorial on how to get the best sounding audio, they tell you to usually set your audio at around -6 dB. And that's typically because any change plus or minus of 6 dB is going to either increase by double or decrease by the same the volume of your track. If I, sitting in front of this camera, sitting the same distance away from this microphone, were to increase the level of my track volume by 6 dB, my voice would sound twice as loud. Even though I'm not talking twice as loud, I'm not raising my voice, I'm talking at the same volume. But by increasing that sound by 6 dB, it's going to sound twice as loud. Now, if I were to do it again and raise it another 6 dB, it would sound twice as loud from that second section. Okay, from that first increase to that second increase, it's an exponential increase in volume. Same thing as when you lower your volume. So if I were to take the input volume of my track here, and again, the same distance away from the microphone, I'm talking at the same speaking volume, but I were to drop the volume of my track to -6 dB, it would cut the audio of my voice in half. Okay, and it would sound like I'm much further away, I'm much quieter. And again, from that first jump to that second jump, that's going to increase or decrease by half. Again, the volume of my voice, even though nothing has changed with me talking. So you can see how this can have a positive or negative impact on your video or your audio, depending on what it's set to. And I think I have mine set to 0, which I don't think is ideal, but so far it's worked for me. But we'll see how it works afterwards. Hey guys, editor Andrew here. As I'm watching this section back, I realized that while I explained why a change in 6 dB can impact your clip, I didn't really explain why people usually recommend reducing the volume by about 6 dB. And that's for something called headroom. And what that means is it's just giving you a little bit of leeway in your audio if there is any clipping or any really loud noises or dynamic changes in the audio. We can take those into account and prepare for those so they're not clipping, they're not distorting, or not damaging your audio in any way. By having that room of -6 dB, you're giving yourself a buffer so that you can safely record your audio and it's going to sound quieter than it originally did when you recorded it. So I hope that clears it up. Let's get back to the video. So for this Rode adjustment, for this preset, we want the camera record level adjustment to be -18 dB. So that's going to be really quiet coming into the camera. And I'm going to assume that it's because it's going to be a lot easier to work with in post-production. And we can really reduce the amount of external noise and really just focus on the quality of your subject's voice, in this case, mine. Before we dive into the audio examples, I wanted to show you how to change the camera audio settings in camera. And I wanted to actually show you guys what the Lumix GH6 looks like, because I don't get to showcase it on this channel. It's my only camera that isn't my phone or my GoPro, but it's a great compact camera. The lenses are super cheap because of the smaller sensor. I have this cage on it from Small Rig, and I just wanted to show you how I mount the mic usually. You can see right there, it does say GH6, so I'm already set this over to the preset for the GH6, but we're gonna go ahead and flick the camera on. We wanna make sure we're in movie mode, okay? And then from here, we're just gonna go into the menu. Now we wanna make sure that the movie is selected. We come down to this first microphone here, and again, those 4 settings that we're gonna work on: wind cut, sound record level limiter, sound record level adjustment, and sound record gain level. So now mine is currently set to low, so I'm just gonna tap in, and that's where we want it actually. We don't want it set to standard. So this was the only thing that was set correctly going into this experiment. The record level adjust, remember I had mine set to 0. We want it cranked all the way down to -18, making it super duper quiet. Sound record level limiter, mine is currently on. We're gonna turn it off. And then with the wind cut, again, mine's turned to standard. Currently, we want that off. So those are your 4 basic settings that we're working on inside the camera to work with the GH6 preset on the Rode Wireless. Let's hear how it sounds. All right, so here's what my audio sounds like fresh out of camera with the old camera settings that you just saw me change. But I also wanted to remind you that inside of the Rode Wireless Go 2, I'm sitting at a fine gain adjustment of -15 dB. Let's take a listen to the GH6 preset. And so this is the audio preset for the GH6 inside the Rode Wireless Go 2 after we've made those camera updates to the Lumix GH6. So as predicted, we've got the audio presets that I had originally input into the camera. They came in very hot, very loud, and there was a lot of hiss and noise underneath my voice. The voice I didn't think was too bad. It was a little bit high-end frequency for me, and we'll talk about that in a second. But compared to the Rode Wireless Go 2 GH6 preset, that one was very quiet. The audio was super low. So here's what it sounded like when I tried to boost it in Final Cut by 12 dB. And so this is the audio preset for the GH6 inside the Rode Wireless Go 2 after we've made those camera updates to the Lumix GH6. More static was introduced. My voice was a little louder, but not as loud as the original clip, but it still had that high-end sort of tonality to it, but there was a lot more static, or at least a lot more noticeable static, right? So what can we do about that static and that hissing, that room noise, as we call it? Final Cut has a great feature called voice isolation. It uses machine learning to sort of cut out anything that isn't a speaking voice. So here's what both clips with the voice isolation feature in Final Cut sound like on and off. All right, so here's what my audio sounds like fresh out of camera with the old camera settings that you just saw me change. All right, so here's what my audio sounds like fresh out of camera with the old camera settings that you just saw me change. And so this is the audio preset for the GH6 inside the Rode Wireless Go 2 after we've made those camera updates to the Lumix GH6. And so this is the audio preset for the GH6 inside the Rode Wireless Go 2 after we've made those camera updates to the Lumix GH6. Now, I gotta be honest, this is one of the first times that I've used the voice isolation feature. It's relatively new. I gotta say, I think it does a pretty good job of cutting out all that hissing and all that room noise. So I will probably continue to use this feature a little bit more. And as far as the high-end quality, the sort of, I don't want to say it's quite tinny, but it doesn't sound as booming and as bassy as this mic right here. And that's because each mic has a different audio profile. Just like my GH6 is going to have a different color profile than the Sony a7S III, okay? My Rode Wireless Go 2 is going to have a different audio profile from this Presonus PD70. So what I'll probably do in the back end to get it to match more closely to this microphone would be to boost my low end frequencies in the EQ and sort of drop off and taper off those high to mid end frequencies to get a more comparable sound to something like this. Okay, so all of these things considered, what do I think of the new presets for the Rode Wireless Go 2? I think they're a great idea for people who don't know that much about audio, who want to try to understand their camera's audio settings a little bit more and get the best sound quality possible for their videos. I think if you have any of the cameras that are listed in the Rode camera presets and you have the Rode Wireless Go 2, I think it's a great starting off point. What I'm probably going to do with the preset is mess around with my camera's internal settings a little bit and try to find a recording level adjustment that's not quite as drastic as that 18 dB. I'll probably also play around a little bit to see if I can reduce more of that room noise in camera, because I'm shooting for clients a lot of the time and I'm not the one doing the editing, so I don't want them to have to rely on using some sort of voice isolation feature to cut out that room noise. I want to try to minimize it as much as possible in camera so that they don't have to deal with it. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you got something out of it, please leave me a comment down below. Let me know what it was. Give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if that's something that you're interested in doing. I do a lot of different types of videos, and that's because I want to share my creative journey with you. You know, I've done audio, I've done video, I'm getting into photography, I'm learning lighting, and I want to put these videos out there not only as an experiment for myself, but also for those of you out there who are learning with me. And hopefully we can build a community of learners together. Again, thank you guys for watching. If you got anything useful out of this, leave a comment down below, leave a like, and I will see you on the next video.